Good evening, everybody. This is the January 22nd, 2020 hearing for the Health Committee. I am Councilman Christopher Burnett, Chairman of the committee. We're also joined by Councilmember Henry, representing the 4th District, member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Slifer, representing the 5th District, member of the committee. I think a few members on the way. Also joining us are Nina Themlis from the Mayor's Office. From Jack's office yet, but we'll have some representatives from the President's office at some point during the hearing. And we're also joined to my immediate right by Margaret Karen, the committee staff person, and Matthew Peters, I see in the back, also from Legislative Services. So today we are having a hearing on Council Bill 19-0165R, Be More Clean, Coordinated Agency Community Cleanup and Maintenance Strategy. As the lead sponsor on this bill, the intention is to encourage a multi-agency response, much like we've leveraged in the issue of violence reduction in the Baltimore City, to push for that same effort of collaboration and reduction of silos among city agencies, as well as encouraging greater partnerships with the community and community-led efforts to keep the city clean. One of the issues that we know for sure in this health committee, we've continued to have these monthly hearings on a number of topics related to social determinants of health, and the issue of cleanliness is a public health issue, which is why we are here in the health committee today. And we know that if we, get our city free from trash, toxins, vermin, overgrowth, across the city of Baltimore, we know that people's willingness to work with the city, to collaborate with the city, and just feel better about the conditions in the city and their community go up. And also, there are health outcomes that we know result from a clean and healthy city. So we didn't want this just to be a health conversation, so we are also joined by a number of representatives from, and I'll allow you all to introduce yourselves, but several city agencies representing sort of the full scope of what it takes to keep the city clean, and for all of us in all neighborhoods. So with that, we're going to move to agency reports / presentations. So we'll start at the request of the Mayor's Office in order, no particular order of preference, because I love all of you here. We're going to start with OPI, the first presentation. Office of Performance and Innovation, sorry.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'm Dan Heimowitz, the Director of the Mayor's Office of Performance and Innovation. That office includes both CityStat and the Mayor's Innovation Team. Thanks for having us here today. Really, appreciate the opportunity to talk about the work we're doing together across agencies to make the city cleaner. The administration is committed to an all-hands-on-deck coordinated effort to make Baltimore cleaner, and the sort of coordinating entity that we've been working on together is something called CleanStat, which I can talk a little bit about more. So I want to talk a little bit about what CleanStat means, and then specifically the issue of city coordination, which is related. So first, just what is CleanStat? So one of the first things that Mayor Young asked my office to do was to create a vehicle for accountability and coordination for city cleanliness efforts. So that is what we call CleanStat. So at its kind of like most basic level, it's a monthly meeting to monitor city agencies' performance on different aspects of cleaning. And just say, I think CleanStat is really both about accountability but also action. Bunch of different agencies are involved with this process, Department of Public Works, DHCD, ECB, and Be More Beautiful, DOT, and Rec and Parks, amongst others, but those are the core agencies that are part of the process. We've set measurable goals in four areas that we look at in that meeting. So first of all, holding violators accountable. So that's performance related to investigating illegal dumping and whether we're efficiently conducting investigations and responding to dumping incidents. Second is keeping streets and alleys clean. So that's how efficiently and equitably we're closing out street and alley service requests. Third is maintaining vacant and abandoned properties, so how efficiently and equitably we're doing things like mowing and boarding. And then fourth, efficiently remove waste and recycling. So that is more about the efficiency of the DPW's more routine cleaning and trash pickup operations, which are quite important as well. And just to say, and I mentioned this last week at the hearing on small haulers, we've created a public dashboard so that residents can follow city performance and track the goals that we're looking at. And we think it's a pretty accessible tool for people to use. And so we think it's a really important way for the public to be involved with this accountability process that we do as part of CleanStat. So that's what CleanStat is. But I also want to talk about sort of specifically about coordination, because as I understand it, I think that's a key concern raised, by the chair in this session here. So I want to highlight 4 specific sort of examples of coordination that are connected to CleanStat, but sort of flow also into some of the working group activities that we do outside of the main meeting. So first of all is something that we informally call a mowing task force. So we're bringing together agencies which have mowing capability. So that's not just DPW, of course, but others, including DGS, DOT, and Rec and Parks. And so on weekends, these agencies are going out together to tackle mowing together. I think this may sound basic on the surface, but I think the coordination that we've done, both in terms of clarifying what the different responsibilities are on a given weekend, in terms of the expectations, in terms of which equipment is expected to be brought, in terms of protocols for checking with DPW supervisors, I think has been really effective. And each week we look at the data to see how that performance has gone from the previous weekend, and we can see improvements in that work. So I think that's been really useful and something I think we're really excited to continue going forward. So this is coordinated mowing activity on weekends. Second, I want to talk about the Data Fellows Program. So this is specifically a collaboration and coordination between the Mayor's Office of Performance and Innovation and DPW right now. So this is a program where we have data analysts who actually embed with city agencies to help them better use data for their operations. So right now, one of our data fellows is working with Mr. Chalmers here and his team to improve how they're collecting data on their crew's performance, and I'm really optimistic about what that's going to mean for efficiency gains from sanitation crews going forward. So that's another example where I think we're aligning, again, for example, what the mayor's office is doing and what an agency is doing towards cleaning. The third thing I want to talk about is some of our work on gateways. So this is an effort that brings together DPW, DOT, Rec and Parks, and DHCD to collaborate on cleaning key gateways and roads throughout the city. So we're using both 311 data, but we also send out inspectors to see how these how clean the roads are, and we also the inspectors take photos that we then come together to analyze. So, for example, if there's some area or some type of cleaning problem that isn't being addressed, we bring the agencies together and ask, and make sure it's clear who should be responding to that particular issue. So I think that the combination of the quantitative data, but also having photos from the field is really useful in terms of improving how that coordination is working. And the final piece that I think is worth mentioning is some of the way that we're working together with, and again, this is part of CleanStat, with DHCD to really think hard about the using data to look at the enforcement strategies that DHCD uses. So, for example, looking with the data at repeat offenders of illegal dumping, and how are we responding to some of those folks who are repeatedly in offense, and how do we target that group in particular. So we're looking at that, looking at some of the tools that the DHCD uses, such as cameras, and how effective they are, and how we can, again, make them more effective. So these are examples of how, again, we're not just using data for data's sake, but data to actually coordinate better and also improve performance across city agencies. So those are some of the things I wanted to highlight. I know the agencies and the experts in the agencies will have a lot more to say in their remarks coming up. Thank you.
Before we open for questions for you, I do want to acknowledge we've been joined by Councilmember Clark, representing the 14th District, member of the committee, and President Scott. Did want to give you an opportunity to...
No, you're fine. Continue. I'll ask my question.
Okay. And Caitlin Young from the President's office. I saw pop in at some point. There he is. Yep. Okay. So you mentioned the dashboard. What efforts have been made to communicate out the existence of that dashboard to communities, community associations, community groups for feedback, community-based organizations that are doing this work? Can you talk a little bit about outreach efforts to promote that work?
Yep. So first of all, I think like one of the really good things about the creation of this, so first of all, I think data in general can be sort of, great in theory, but is it being sort of used and looked at? So we actually, in like the run up to launching this in December, we worked with community groups. We worked in partnership with Be More Beautiful to actually get feedback from residents about draft versions of this to improve the dashboard, to make more, so it could be very clear about how it's used. So for example, one of the things that changed from like an early draft to a later draft was bringing onto the front page the ability to search in your particular neighborhood. I think the early stage, it just was kind of the citywide picture, so the ability to search with that. So I think just literally involving residents in the design process. In terms of communications, we've communicated it through a lot of the city's main communications channels, the City Hall, social media channels, and if I'm not mistaken, I think we're working on scheduling a upcoming chance to talk through the dashboard with the council I think quite soon, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a key piece, especially when we talk about the technology gaps and understanding of how these things work. I recommend reaching out to Enoch Pratt Library and other spaces where people in the community are going to be already, and that our ability to provide that sort of technical support, I think, would be helpful. And using the liaisons that are already going to meetings to do demonstrations on this, because I think it is helpful for people to be able to gain access to this information, know it exists, and be able to utilize it effectively. Can you also, I guess, speak to so you're in the room, there's information sharing. Are there, what best practices are you trying to drive or looking to when we talk to this new collaborative effort? What are sort of the theories of change that you're trying to move forward?
So I think I don't know if I'd call it exactly the theories of change, but I think I get the spirit of what you're asking, and I hope I'm going to answer it. I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do is be super clear with agencies about, there's the top line indicator, is trash being picked up on time, but that doesn't really get to is it really working? I mean, that gets to one measure of it. I think beneath that, and one thing we've really been trying to do is really understand from the agencies what is your strategy, or what are your strategies, and how do we develop measures specific to the performance of those approaches. So I think I cited it earlier, but just the example of the cameras that we use for enforcement around illegal dumping, being very clear about how we're going to look at data to understand how well those approaches are working, and what the data can tell us. So I think it's fundamentally about data, but being really clear about what data can tell us about strategy, and therefore what we might change about strategy.
President Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Director, for being here and for all your hard work. And sorry I was a little delayed. And if you said this already, I'm sorry that you had to repeat yourself. So, talking about CleanStat, can you walk me through like the metrics that you're going to measure for success?
Sure, Council President. So I talked about the four goal areas that we look at in that meeting. So first are holding violators accountable. So that is a set of measures around mainly investigation of illegal dumping. So there's a set of service requests that we look at for that measure, and there's a certain on-time performance goal for that. Second is keeping streets and alleys clean. So that's the primary SRs, service requests around street and alley cleaning. And we have, again, on-time performance goals for that category. Third is maintain vacant and abandoned properties, and again, a set of goals around a set of on-time performance goals for that. And then fourth is efficiently remove waste and recycling, and that pertains more to DPW's routine trash collection activity. So we have, specific, SR baskets that we're looking at for each of those, and then goals for each of those.
Can you walk us through each batch for the SRs and what the goals are?
I can grab my computer if I.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Grab
I
it.
don't have it all written down, but.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, you're
Is
fine.
this okay? Yeah.
I mean, other than it being a Mac, it's fine. It's quite okay by me.
Council President, so I'll go through the list with the more specific measures. So for holding violators accountable, the SRs we look at are HCD illegal dumping, HCD sanitation property, HCD vacant building. So it's a composite of those three. For keep streets and alleys clean, it's SW's dirty street and SW dirty alley. For maintain vacant and abandoned properties, it's cleaning, SW cleaning, and SW HGW, high grass and weeds, and then boarding, SW boarding. And then for efficiently remove waste and recycling, it's SW mixed refuse and SW recycling.
Thank you. And do you have the time frames for each of the SRs that you're holding them accountable to?
So the way we do it is we there's a certain goal for like the percentage of those that we want to see
Okay.
Be
Completed
on time. So
And what is on time?
Okay, so for holding violators accountable, it's 95%. For keep streets and alleys clean, it's the goal is 70% right now. For maintain vacant and abandoned properties, it is also 70%. And I believe for efficiently remove waste and recycling, it's, I want to say 85%. Mr. Chalmers, does that sound right?
85, 90%, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know where we are on each of these right now?
I do. We've in the most recent review, and again, this is all just to reiterate, it's all available on a public dashboard. So this is something that can be viewed by all. The hold violators accountable. The target was met in the last month, and
What was the actual percentage number?
it was 99% on time in December.
All right.
And then for the keep streets and alleys clean, I think I'll use the calendar year number from 2019. It was 49%, and maintain vacant and abandoned properties, it was 46%. So those are not meeting the targets. But if I can say what we've
Sorry, that was the last. You had 4?
46.
And
No,
for
he
waste
hasn't
and
got.
recycling.
Yeah.
Did I miss that one yet?
No, he didn't get to that. one.
Oh, I'm sorry. So and the efficiently removed waste and recycling, 82%.
Sorry.
So I think that is just short of the, and those are for the whole calendar year. And just to say, we've prioritized in the coming months working through the basically the overdue work orders, because we basically, I think, sort of getting through that is what is going to allow DPW to meet those goals in the years ahead. But we think that catch up is really going to be important to being able to achieve that.
And I know that Mr. Chalmers is gonna speak later, but just in my personal dealings, it's oftentimes seems to me that if I'm sending him something, it's a location where in some cases where the guys and girls have just cleaned it up, and then it's put back. How are we dealing with that issue as far as how we're assessing the success of what we're doing, but also how we're going to get to the crux of even the manpower issue, right? So if we're having if his crews are consistently cleaning up a corner on, Monroe and Pratt, and they have to consistently come back and they dump and they come back again, how are we coordinating through all the agencies and even getting to the point where if we're talking about talking to the residents in that neighborhood and talking to people about how this actually impacts from a health perspective, attracting rodents, et cetera, but also even at the end of it, how it impacts their bottom line, because these are taxpayer dollars that are being spent over and over again. And just wanted to see also, like, what are we going to do to move those numbers, right? Because I think that everywhere we go, people are talking about how dirty the city is, and we know people are working hard every day, but if we set a goal and we're well below that goal, then we are seeing the same thing that the citizens are seeing. So we have to figure out new and creative ways to help people reach their goals.
So, first of all, just to, agree that, I think, DPW Solid Waste has a tough job, and, there's a lot of work to do. And, I'm sure Mr. Chalmers can speak much more eloquently than I can about, the sort of repeat work that often has to be done. I mean, I think on that, in the areas where we've defined, where there's, let's say, a geographic focus. So, for example, we talked about some of the work on specific gateways. I think what we are now doing is identifying some of those specific, like, locations where we're seeing repeat problems and asking, for example, DHCD to, investigate in those locations in response to them. Now, I admit that that's something that's tough to, like, scale to every place in the city simultaneously. So I think that's where it does come back to, the importance of community engagement efforts, which is something that, I know DPW and Rebecca from ECB, Be More Beautiful, is going to talk more about. So I think, there are in some geographies, I think we are and can do even more to, like, identify where there's, like, specific locations where we're seeing that just, like, repeat problems, even if one of Mr. Chalmers' crews has been there, hours earlier or something. That is something we are beginning to do but again, it's with specific geographic focus. So I think it does come down to the need for, a wider, kind of whole of city effort that is a bit more challenging.
And I agree, but also I just want to ask a question, because explain to me what the gateway is. Are these, like, the gateways into and out of the city? Is that what we're talking about?
Not exclusively. There's a set of roads that throughout the city that we're making sure to bring DPW, DOT, and Rec and Parks together to ensure that there are no gaps in service, and that any issues are responded to together and in a coordinated way.
Do we know? Can you just tell us what streets they are?
Why can't I do this?
Sorry.
I think there are gateways in and out of the city.
They're not, they're, I mean, I can
Yeah, read the list.
So I'll read the main street. So Hanover Street, Frederick Avenue, Greenmount Avenue, Park Heights Avenue, Druid Hill Avenue, MLK Junior Boulevard, Harford Road, Councilwoman, Loch Raven Boulevard, Washington Boulevard, I-295, Russell Street, Paca Street, Wilkins Avenue, Pulaski Highway, Liberty Heights Avenue, Charles Street, West Franklin Street, Eastern Avenue, Falls Road, Gay Street, Boston Street. And just to say, I think this list is still growing, and the way we selected this was looking at specifically where there are the most SRs and where there was the highest volume of traffic. So that combination led to that. Traffic's the wrong word. The highest volume of ridership.
Cars. I was gonna just say that based off that list, I don't see how Edmondson Avenue or Bel Air Road aren't on there because you can't travel there on Harford Road, so everyone takes Bel Air Road because Harford Road will be closed for the next 3 years at least. So we should probably consider adding those to the list.
I'd just like to add, even those, I'm sorry.
You're fine, Mr. Chalmers.
Good evening. John Chalmers, Bureau of Solid Waste. Just because those aren't on that particular list, we do service the other gateways. Quarter can collection is done daily. So they're not, they do have service.
Sorry, and I didn't mean to imply, Mr. Chalmers, sorry. I didn't mean to imply this isn't like the only roads that are being cleaned. This is just where we are specifically pulling together agencies to review together and to make sure there's no gaps. And again, this is just a starting list. This is, I would say, a relatively newer thing we are doing in CleanStat. It's something we're going to continue to do and to build on, but
Yep.
definitely open to suggestions on how we build it out.
Like the fourth highest traffic roadway in the city. So, okay, but keep going.
Yep.
I don't want to hog up all the questions. I'm done for right now, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Clark.
I'm sorry I was late, and I apologize. And I'm very familiar with the good work that you do,
Thank you, Councilwoman.
and thank you for that. There are some kinds of data that I think also are more sort of like grassrootsy, that I think that there's a way for you to approach with this data approach to things. For example, what do we have to pay to get a CDL driver, to come to work for the city of Baltimore and not quit as soon as they have experience and go anyplace else which pays more? Where are we with an increase in the salaries scale for that position and the hiring of and how many would the data indicate we need to even keep the existing crews of, let's say, solid waste or DPW crews that go out, wastewater crews? How many CDL workers who aren't going to leave us in a minute do we need? What does the data indicate, and what does the budget projection indicate? For example, I'm not trying to subtract from what is it you're calling it, the dashboard, whatever that is. That's my job to learn, and I will. I'm just trying to deal with what comes in at us every day. And that one thing, CDL, workers and pay and hiring and retaining, certainly from my observation, is crucial and something that we should apply these principles to, because you can't do all these other things if you don't have a crew, because if they don't have a driver, they don't go anyplace that day.
Yep.
Well, yeah, there are standbys, but it's a very thin rank of such. The other thing is, for example, this illegal dumping. Who in the heck is doing it? And why are they doing it, where they're doing it, and is there some kind of data on the areas that are being singled out for this? There is in my, there are, I don't know, focus. There is a focus in my district of certain locations, repeating as has been discussed. Where are those locations? What are the routes into them? How do we figure out where this dumping is coming from? Because we certainly don't catch people. That is not my experience. Or if we do, if the camera catches somebody, do they know the license number or anything else? It's dark. So you got to presume you're not going to catch them in the act. They keep coming back to the same place over and over. The housing people, I'm sorry, that's what. The housing people, they do the best they can. I'm not criticizing. They go out, they do all that they can do. But you can't catch somebody who is going to show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you might have a camera, but they know about the camera, so they're not going to show their license plate. You know? But they're coming from somewhere, and they're going to the same places. Is there a way to apply this data stuff to catching them? Or is it something about our small hauler system that needs to be spread to these people that are coming into the city and dumping their construction stuff, et cetera? So I guess I just wanted to say those things. I admire the work your group up, that 6th floor group does. I do. And I think it's very important. But I think the data analyses should also be applied to what's happening on the ground. I mean, really, what's causing the lack of ability to achieve 100%. And it's all about causes and sources, many of which we could address if we applied these kinds of logic and what you're doing to the things that are happening on the ground that stop us from achieving these high goals that I think we should. What do you think?
So I'll do my best. On the second piece around illegal dumping, I think sort of Jason from DHCD probably has a better, more detailed answer, which he can speak to. But I think in terms of like what like data can help with, but maybe also the limitations. I mean, I think we can do things, and this is something we can work on, is to identify the places where the most frequent dumping is happening. I think that's something that is we can do it in a very data-driven way and see what we can learn from that. I think the question of sort of the, who is a much trickier question, and I think just like the existing data we have is probably less well equipped to answer that kind of question. I mean, we can answer, of course, the folks that we do catch, but in terms of all the incidents that unfortunately are happen and maybe they're not seen. I mean, it's a tough data question to
well,
answer.
That's why we have the best people doing it, because there's got to be a way. You've got willing workers here, and they're smart, and they're faced with this. So it seems to me that what you're doing what is the name of the organization then, CityStat now?
So it's the Office of Performance and Innovation, which includes city staff.
Innovation. And so you've got good people there, you've got good people out here trying to catch these dumpers. But it's chasing them after it happened. So they need you all to let us chase them before they get there.
You know, and Councilwoman, we're you know, again, where the data can help, we're doing, you know.
It's just part of the formula. And I don't mean to get you too far off track, because I'm really, what about CDL?
So, again, I think Mr. Chalmers probably can speak.
Councilwoman, we're going to have each agency also present.
Oh.
So I would direct that to Mr. Chalmers when we get to DBW. I don't want, because I think that's what you're going to.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
you got your teamwork going on.
And you know, Councilwoman, I'll say this, if I can, just, I mean, I think in CleanStat, I think, and we just did it for the first time last meeting, I think the issue of staffing at DPW is, you know, that's the kind of foundation for, you know, Mr. Chalmers, you and your team is being able to work effectively. So that's something we're going to be looking at in that CleanStat meeting going forward and working together to figure out what kind of solutions we can come up with. But I'd say that's just started, so I think that's more to come on that. But just to agree with you that it's like absolutely critical and something I think we need to be
Can't go
laser focused
anyplace
on
without
in that meeting and with the data.
Thank you. Chairman.
So before I hand it over for questions, Councilmember Henry, I would note that one of the viewers on Charm TV, thank you guys for watching, noted that they could not access the website, the CleanStat Dashboard. Could you, for the watching audience, provide some instructions on how to get to it?
I can
confirm
read
if
off
it's
the,
okay.
yeah, so it's BALT, OPI, B-A-L-T, OPI.com, and then /CleanStat.
Okay. I hope that.
That should,
Okay.
I think that should work.
All right, Councilmember Henry.
Thank you. When you were going through the list of percentages for the goals, it sounded like these are the same goals that we can already find in the budget book for each service. What isn't in the budget book, and I'm wondering if it is on the dashboard somewhere, is a lineup of what the actual time measure is for each one of those items. So it's good to know that we're closing 89% of an action on time, but it would also be good to know what is on time. And so if that information isn't already on the dashboard, how hard would it be to add that information?
I am just double checking because I don't want to misspeak. Actual goal. It is on there. I will double check that it's on there across the board for everything, because I understood, right? We're talking about sort of aggregates, and so for each one, it should be, we'll make sure that it is on there for everyone. I believe that it already is.
And each of those goals that you described, the percentages, that's also on there?
That is on there, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Are any more questions for OPI? All right, so.
Yeah, I'm good for now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're going to move to Mr. John Chalmers.
So, good afternoon, committee members. Thank you for having me this afternoon. My name is John Chalmers. I'm the Bureau Head for Solid Waste. As you all are aware, the Bureau of Solid Waste is responsible for collecting and disposing of mixed refuse and recyclables, operating convenience centers, transfer station, landfill, cleaning right-of-way, right-of-way boarding and cleaning, mowing and rat abatement, mechanical street sweeping, harbor cleaning operation, and other vital services that contribute to the public health and safety, economy, development of overall quality of life for Baltimore City residents. I'd like to provide a high-level overview of the the Bureau of Solid Waste partnership with other city agencies, our approach to cleaning the city, and our partnership with the community. We value our partnerships and collaborative efforts with city agencies. We participate in CleanStat and CleanStat work group meetings and attend regular scheduled collaborative meetings with other agencies. These meetings result in collaborative efforts and initiatives to support this agency goals. One of our goals is cleaning streets and alleys, maintaining vacant and abandoned properties. Cleaning the right-of-ways include responding to service requests for dirty streets and alleys, cleaning up illegal dumping, emptying corner cans, proactive cleaning gateways, performing mechanical street sweeping, and graffiti removal. Maintaining vacant and abandoned properties include boarding, cleaning, and mowing of over 318,000 service requests for fiscal year 19. We responded to service requests with the oldest first, strategically grouping service requests that are geographic in proximity. Unfortunately, we are still catching up with the backlog that grew during the Volage Reduction Initiative. The VRI zones required an expedited response rate to service requests. As the number of VRI zones kept growing, we fell behind on service requests in other areas of the city. We are still feeling the effects of this, but are working hard to catch up. For example, since September the 20th, the backlog of clean and vacant properties went from 13,537 requests to 4,404 requests as of yesterday.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, so in September, we had a backlog of 13,000,
Got it, okay.
okay?
Cleaning and boarding?
Cleaning and boarding, correct. So we're currently working with DOT, DGS, Recs and Parks to work on weekends to tackle the backlog of cleaning and mowing vacant lots throughout the city. We used data to make the operation more efficient over time. We expect this backlog to be completed in April. As Dan mentioned earlier, we have a gateway initiative that brings together DPW, DOT, Rec and Parks to ensure that 20 roads, high traffic volume, are part of the city-wide initiative to maintain those. OPI is using a team of inspectors to rate the cleanliness of these roads to ensure that they are being cleaned. Talked a little bit about the data fellow that has been embedded in the Bureau of Solid Waste to give the department a more granular view of the work of its sanitation crews, which will ultimately lead to more efficient services for residents. DBW is using the new dashboard to focus on equity and service throughout the city, deploying resources in a manner to address service requests in an equitable manner. We work strategically to deploy resources as efficiently as we can to address service requests and to proactively clean. One of our core functions is to collect waste recycling from households throughout the city. Annually, we collect from over 200,000 households twice a week. We miss less than 1% of collection, some of which may be due to resident error. Nearly 147,500 tons of mixed refuse were collected in FY19. Technology has a significant role in the operation efficiencies. Our drivers and crews are still working off of paper routes, paper printouts of service requests to address each day. The service requests later need to be closed out by admin staff in the office. The ability to have routing software and to close out SRs in the field will greatly assist with the efficiencies of data. We are actively pursuing routing technology to improve efficiency and the use of electronic devices in the field to close out SRs more quickly. Community engagement and partnership is absolutely essential to success. We cannot clean our way out of this situation. Littering and dumping must be curbed through improving behavior and attitude. It is the property owner's responsibility to keep their property clean, well maintained. Per city code, the property owner is responsible for maintaining the sidewalks and the alley abutting the property. We take several approaches to work with the communities to improve cleanliness. DPW created a community liaison position several years ago to enable the department to have a representative regularly attend community meetings and be point of contact for communities. These liaisons bring back valuable information from DPW to the communities and take concerns from the residents and community leaders back to DPW to be addressed. Solid waste quadrant chiefs and superintendents, they regularly attend community meetings as well, directly engaging with the community. DPW conducts educational outreach to schools as we recognize how important it is to educate and enable our youth who are the future of our city. Every year we host Youth Works. DPW hosts 130 last summer, teaching them the importance of the city's cleanliness and the intricacies of waste management. The Bureau of Solid Waste the Bureau of Solid Waste coordinates the mayor's spring and fall cleanup. These events encourage communities to register and actively participate in cleaning projects in the neighborhoods, such as alleyways. Participants in these registered cleanups are eligible to receive stormwater fee credits. Typically, more than 4,000 participants from more than 250 groups participate each year in the cleanups. We usually have youth participate through Be More Beautiful and other groups. We also have community pitch-in program. That's a very popular program within the Bureau of Solid Waste, which allows community groups up to 4 roll-off events per year to dispose of their debris collected during neighborhood cleanups. There was 190 community groups organized over 1,000 pitch-ins during FY19. The volunteer cleanup SR category was created in 2019 to allow groups or individuals to register for cleanup events even if they do not need a roll-off container. These allowed us to better track both small and large events. DPW hosted events, also provided an opportunity to share information with residents. Each year we hold recycling bin sales, shredding events, and grow centers at different locations in the city to provide residents with a convenient means of purchasing recycling bins and learning more about beautification efforts and how to manage trash and how to recycle. I thank you for your time, and I am now prepared to answer your questions.
Thank you. So the first I'll throw out is the issue that Councilwoman Clark raised about CDLs. I know we've talked a lot about driver retention, the route mechanisms, et cetera. If you want to go into her line of questioning.
Yes, so there was a study done by DHR, and I believe that study came to a conclusion, and the results of that went to the board either last Wednesday.
Last
Okay, yeah, went to the board Wednesday. I'm not for sure how that turned out, but I do know it was on the BOE agenda.
Yeah, no, it was approved by the board, right? Correct. The pay increase for CDLs?
They did?
I believe so. Yeah.
So we're going to get a raise for CDL workers?
Yes, so there was a, excuse me. So there was a study done by DHR across the city. They looked at, I believe it was 28 different CDL categories, and they kind of merged those categories into 4 separate categories, and with that, there was a pay increase for those drivers.
And so is it up to industry standards so that we can hire people that won't go away? Oh, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Can I just ask 2 questions?
Yeah,
That was one.
Go for it. You got it.
I do know that there was an increase. I can't speak to the specifics right now, but there was an increase.
It's 3 questions. Effective when and?
Unfortunately, the questions you're asking me, I can't give you a positive answer. I do know that
we'll have somebody from the president's office follow up with you on that, because I got some information from the president's office on this when I saw it on the agenda. I had the same.
It's great. It's great news. So I guess what we need to do is it will be retroactive. In other words, existing CDL drivers will benefit from it, right?
I would have to defer to DHR. I don't want to misspeak.
That'll be a nasty little fight argument if it doesn't. But It sounds like good news, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to hear that we're on our
It's
way.
definitely a step in the right direction. It's a long time
Right,
coming.
so let's
Yes.
get some people hired, some men and women who drive trucks.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chalmers, I did have a few questions for you. And maybe, I don't know if you would have this on hand, maybe it's a follow-up, but just to get a better idea of the cost, how much does it cost DBW to go out, and this is average, to clean an illegal dumping site or remove debris from a vacant property?
It can, it can average anywhere from $180, up to, a couple $100, depending on where we go. We have your category, category sizes is how we set it up. So category 1s, 2s, and 3s. For category 1, it's about $180. That's from 30 minutes to an hour to address. Category 2s are from 1 hour to 2 hours, which is, I think, in the neighborhood of $230 to address. And then your category 3s, which are your heavier jobs, which are, about $300 to address. But there are also those categories that aren't listed there, which may take a crew, and I've gotten some calls from you, that it takes us a couple of days to clean, where we have to come and clean, we have to come back because we can't get it all in one day because it's a heavy lift. So that's an average.
Now, this is actually helpful. Okay, so the other, I guess on this line of questioning, we talked a lot, we had a hearing the other night, so you don't have to go into the full reiteration of the challenges with illegal dumping, but what do you see as sort of the primary barrier to really addressing these repeat sites that were mentioned earlier? There's at least, you and I talk a lot. I can tell you there's at least 10 locations or more in my district that no matter how many times I drive through, there's something there. What do you think is the biggest issue, the biggest barrier to eliminating that sort of challenge where we continue to have repeated sites over and over again? You're going to the same locations.
Changing one's behavior. That's the biggest key. And there's so many other factors around that. It's opportunity for the folks who live in that community, opportunity to jobs. So a lot of idle time, and you have a lot of trash and debris. But we'll never clean our way to a cleaner city. It has to be a multi-pronged approach. Educating folks, engaging the community, empowering the community to come out and clean up. Those are the things that we have to work on. And those are the things that we're working on with the CleanStat initiative, the multi-agency approach. Going out in the afternoons, in the evenings, engaging in community meetings. The reason why we came up with the quadrant system, to have a one-stop shop, to have one division chief per quadrant that a resident can reach out to for all the services provided by DPW. But it's changing one's behavior. We have about 600,000 folks here in the city. And just imagine if all 600,000 picked up some debris, managed their debris in the right way. We wouldn't have a lot of this trash and debris. We clean I-83, and I'll use that as an example. We have to clean I-83 at least 4 or 5 times a week because there's a lot of trash that's thrown in the hard-to-get places where you have to go over the median and walk down a ravine and pull this trash and debris back up. When you get on the off-ramps, the trash and debris that's tossed out of the car. We have to begin to change the behavior of folks in Baltimore City to turn the curve. Well, we can clean up all day, and it's kind of frustrating when you go back to the same locations time and time and time again. It's difficult.
And last question, then I'll hand it over. So it was mentioned earlier that there is a Data Fellows program working in DPW. Can you speak a little bit about how this has improved data collection in your work, what you're measuring, and how you're responding to the results of that program?
So, as Dan mentioned earlier, the Data Fellow has built a dashboard which gives us that real-time information, which helps us to guide operations more efficiently, more equitably across the city. Prior to the dashboard, we're relying on pulling service requests and just chasing service requests. Having that data readily available on a day-to-day basis helps us deploy what little resources we have in the best way to spread it evenly across the city. It's a tool for the supervisors, division chiefs, to help them manage their operations more efficiently. But that's the gist of it.
Okay. President Scott.
Thank you. And Mr. Chalmers, I actually was working on an email to you right now when the chairman called me, but it's not that bad. So I got a couple of follow-ups from you, from your remarks, and thank you again, as always, for your hard work. You said that in September we had 13,000 cleaning and boarding requests, right? And you have that down to 4,000 now?
Correct.
And where did you say you wanted to be before April?
I want to see a zero backlog in the property maintenance service requests. We want to be at zero. That's the goal.
So, question to you is, do you think right now you have the resources to be able to get that done? Because my guess is you're saying April because, that's when the grass is going to start to grow.
Absolutely correct.
With the weather we have these days, we never know if it's going to start to grow then or not. But you think that's when the grass is going to, and then that's when this year's complaints will start to pile up. Do you think you have the resources to get that done?
So that's the beauty of having a data fellow. We looked at the flow of work coming in on the front end. We looked at the resources that are on hand. We're looking at the multi-agency collaboration. And based on all the things that we have, we're going to be close. We're going to be close. But, we could have, God forbid, 10 inches of snow.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah, and that's,
Just need an S word.
right, so, and that
Not
could,
until April, at least.
right, that could throw things off, but the projection is that we're going to be really close in April, but if, something could throw that off one way or another, but we'll honestly believe we'll be in a good place.
And I asked that question because I think, just talking to the workers consistently, they feel like it's overburdened to them, right? And we know that we're working them extremely hard, and we know what that means for them down the line. And also knowing simultaneously the lack of opportunity and access to jobs that we have for people in the very neighborhoods where we're seeing the dumping and the vacants and boarding. And I know we've talked to you guys about this before, but there are models and programs around the country where they actually take money, don't take away from the existing city work. They hire people, young people from those neighborhoods to do that work, which cuts down on your workload and allows your workers to focus in on being proactive and maintaining and keeping with the status quo, while simultaneously we're creating opportunity and doing what you were just talking about with the chairman about building that level of self-responsibility and self-respect in the community. Because when you're held responsible for keeping it clean, you're going to make people think differently, right? If you're a young person,
Absolutely.
your friends, etc. Have we went any further in looking at those kind of models?
I do know that our HR department is working with various groups. Unfortunately, I don't have any information here with me today to share with you, but that was the approach. Going out to community meetings, reaching out to the folks within the community. We're working with Living Classroom, who actually pulls folks from the community. They teach them the soft skills, have them prepared for us when they come. One of the issues we run into, we get a lot of folks that come on board, but for one reason or another, they don't last the entire time. It's either not making it through a drug and alcohol testing at some point. So, we're looking for a program to teach folks those soft skills, so they would have longevity with us. But yes, I could share some information.
Yeah, can you give that to the chairman, a follow-up how we're doing that and how we're doing that and partnering with community groups, and I'm going to say this in the vein of equity, beyond, and I love living classrooms, beyond the big groups, right? We have to meet people in the community where they are, those people that live in those neighborhoods, for example. We have a great partner we all know, a good friend of mine, and Mary Patson, Mark Washington, and Chum, right? The work that they do.
That project.
That what they're doing and creating opportunity for those young men in that very neighborhood through somebody, you know, much like we do with Safe Streets, through a credible messenger. Mark is the credible messenger,
Absolutely.
right? Mary Pat is a credible messenger, and Chum as well. But Mark is a credible messenger who he can get them to come and be a part of that.
Absolutely.
And then my next follow up to that is, so if it was 13,000 in September, what was it in July?
I don't have that number with me.
Can you get that back to us? Because my worry is that if we get down to zero, I don't want us to get down to zero, and then in June we're back at 4,000, and then July we're back at 8,000, and in August we're back at 10,000. And this is for OPI too. If we can figure out using data, everyone knows I'm a data guy, now what we have to do to prevent that from coming. Because, as Mr. Chalmers, if you know, I've said for years before you were in your position, one of my biggest issues is that we know which properties are going to have high grass and weed, a good amount of them every year. So we have to be proactive in making sure that we're letting those owners know, partner with HCD to let them know, like, we're going to issue the citation, we're going to cut, we're going to do whatever we have to do, because we know they're not going to pay, they're not going to cut, they're not going to do anything, they don't care. And we have to use data to get ahead of those things so that we're not having the consistent problems each and every year. My next question, and you brought up my favorite word. You talked about how you guys are trying to work through the lens of equity. So we know that I'm going to be bringing you guys over for hearing specifically about this.
Correct.
But can you go a little deeper? So for us, what we're seeing in the data is that despite the efforts that we have ongoing, if Councilman Burnett is in Emerson Village and he files a 301 complaint for illegal
Data from my district right here.
illegal dumping, right? It might take 10 days. But if he's in, let's just say, 10 Hills, it might take 2 or 3 days. How are you guys monitoring that and trying to correct that? And then this is also a question for OPI. How are you as an office holding every agency, from CleanStat to BPD or GunStat, whatever you're calling their stat today, to everything that we do? What metrics are you measuring them by as far as how they're implementing their work through a lens of equity?
So, two things. You know, I mentioned the dashboard, which will definitely help us, guide us each and every day to make sure we're managing the requests in an equitable manner. But I also want to state that, all service requests aren't built equally. And one of the problems we have, we work out of a service request system as opposed to a work order system. If we were in a work order system, I can pull it up and I can show you by community that we spend X amount of dollars over here, but we get less work done. Excuse me, we get less work done because the lift is much heavier. And when you get to certain neighborhoods, the lift is a lot lighter, so we use our current resources the best we can. So one of the strategies we use, we may send a crew with a pickup truck to some neighborhoods, and they can run through and they can clean up, 25, 30 service requests. But we can shift all of our heavy hitters, for lack of a better term, to other neighborhoods. It takes them 10 times as longer to address the service requests because the lift is so heavy. And then we're going back over and over again. So I'm working to move all of my operations into a work order system. So when I'm asked that question, we'll have data readily available to say, this is the real picture. Looking at a service request is not telling you the entire story.
Thank you. And I think that for OPI, that'll be helpful if we could have that data pushed out in that way, because that'll be helpful for us and also helpful to how we are talking to the citizenry about that. I am done for right now, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. And one request I'll make to you, Mr. Chalmers, or you and your team, would be to all that are willing to sit down with you and your team to discuss priority areas in each district, you know, these hot spots. I mean, obviously the data will reflect, you know, in the calls. However, one of the things, and at least I'm going to ask to sit down and walk through hot spots in my district, and maybe we can work with OPI on this to pinpoint these areas. So one of the things that I know occurs in some parts of my district is where there's strong community leadership, where there's active residents who are really invested. The call volume, at least in my office, is significantly higher than other parts of my district where people may not be as engaged. But I do know for sure, and I've actually had this happen where we weren't getting calls on a particular block that almost a landfill was being developed, but people weren't calling it into 311. They weren't calling my office. Folks had just simply given up. And so for those hot spots, that's what we do weekly checks now on our own, and I'd like an opportunity to sit down and walk through where those areas are and figure out how we can develop strategies, a multi-agency strategy, because it's not just cleaning it up. In some instances, it may be that, you know, I've worked with Rec and Parks on getting logs put in or boulders put in to access, you know, barriers of entry, or with housing department to get cameras. In some parts of my district, I've put up fake signs saying that there's a camera. I know that, just to sort of deter. And I've actually put up cameras myself in parts of the district where I know that those hotspots exist. But I think developing strategies with council input would be helpful in these hotspots, because we may know, based on the relationships that we have on those blocks, where it may be coming from, where there's a slumlord on this block who's continues to do, you know what I mean? Like, we may have that intel that may not show up in the call volume, but could help with addressing these areas that are, you know, we're seeing repeated dumping. President Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chalmers. Question, too, for you guys. I know that we don't do the violence reduction initiative meetings in the morning anymore, but just wanted to make sure that you guys are still communicating around that issue. But also, have you guys ever, and if not, this is something that if OPI could do that, it would be great. If you could provide to this committee, and then also to Councilman Scheifler's Public Safety Committee, like a map, right? Let's just say we do a map where we show all the homicides in the city year to date or last year, and then a heat map or some other way to orient us, even if we can do a map where we can click and take the stuff on and off, orient us with that also has cleaning and dumping requests, mixed trash, housing code violations. I used to have one, but it no longer works because it got crashed in ransomware.
But I can tell you, the one good thing that came out of the VRI, we still have that relationship, and it works. And I'll give you an example. The area of Potee and Hanover, Potee and Patapsco, we have to get in there and clean every day, and we use inmates to do that. And in order to get in and clean, we need the police to come and clear out the folks that are hanging around that Royal Farm there. So it's just a phone call.
I was just down there a few weeks ago, so I know exactly what you mean.
Exactly. So those relationships are still there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chalmers. Next up, we have DHCD, Mr. Jason Hessler / Stephanie Murdoch.
Good evening, Stephanie Murdoch, Legislative Liaison for the Office of Policy and Partnerships at the Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm joined here today with by Jason Hessler, Deputy Commissioner of Permits and Litigation. We're pleased to address the Council regarding our work to address cleanup and maintenance needs throughout Baltimore. Jason is going to start by giving us an overview of code enforcement efforts and efforts around illegal dumping, and I'm going to speak a little bit about community and cross-agency coordination.
Good evening, Jason Hessler, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Housing and Community Development. I apologize, I do need to leave after this. I have childcare pickup duty tonight, and my kid will get left on the corner of Hamilton Avenue if I'm not there by 7. So probably not a great idea. Within code enforcement, we break up the sanitation and illegal dumping really into those two issues. Residential sanitation issues, things like trash not being put out properly or not stored properly between trash collection days, not using trash cans, not having tight-fitting lids, and most of that falls to Deputy Commissioner Booker and his team of 79, I believe that's where they are right now, 79 housing code enforcement inspectors to go out and either cite property owners or issue violation notices, and in cases where the property is vacant or abandoned or a vacant lot, creating a work order to have the properties cleaned or boarded. They also create dirty alley requests, dirty street requests, depending on what type of sanitation issues they're seeing in the area. For the illegal dumping world, which we really look at less of the pileup from residents putting their trash out, maybe in front of a vacant or something like that, and more of somebody coming into the community or dead end or wherever it may be and dumping a pile of stuff, whether it is an eviction clean out, contractor, one of the guys that does the small hauling or basement clean outs, garage clean outs. That kind of stuff falls to our special investigations unit that investigates the illegal dumping. We have currently 12. We are in the process of hiring, hopefully 3 more from just vacant positions through some movement throughout the city into other positions. So we normally, fully staffed, we would have 15 people. They are not solely dedicated to illegal dumping. They also do a lot of our license enforcement. They help find people for the housing inspectors to get good addresses on owners of properties that have violations. So they have about 25 tasks, but they go out. We have 3 guys that go out, or sometimes women that go out every day to check our hotspots. We have cameras. We have 79 cameras that are throughout the city. We have a camera right now in every council district. We don't publish the locations because the cameras work best in catching people when people don't know the camera is there. But we do constantly monitor those cameras. We're at every camera 2 to 3 times a week, checking to see if there's a dumping, checking to see what we caught. To answer Councilwoman Clark's question, our most recent conviction was actually on January 8th, State versus White. There was a dumping in the 3600 block of Fairview Avenue. That gentleman received a 10-day suspended sentence, 1-year supervised probation, $200 fine plus the cost, and 64 hours of community service. And prior to that, on December 18th, 2 gentlemen that were caught. Actually, the first one was one of our cameras caught them. So we were able to identify them, run down all the leads. It led to a conviction. The other one, we were actually out in the field and witnessed 2 guys dumping a couch off of a truck on Neiman Avenue. And one gentleman got 30 days, suspend all but 10 days. So he did 10 days in jail. 1-year supervised probation, $500 fine, and 40 hours. And the other gentleman got 30 days suspended, 1-year supervised probation, $500 fine, and 40 hours of community service. It's uncommon for jail time to be given in a dumping case. It's not unheard of, but it's uncommon. But it is not uncommon for a $400, $500, $600 fine and substantial community service that is usually directed to do it cleaning up trash within Baltimore City.
But not in my district, please.
They usually go through the courts. That's where the supervised probation is. So they go through the court and are monitored to make sure that they do it properly. Sometimes they do it at the yards and other stuff. But they are hopefully learning their lesson and not becoming repeat offenders. It's very uncommon for me to see repeat offenders when we've caught the person. We've had occasions where we have photographs or video of a dumping, but we can't quite get the license plate on the first or second time. And we have a bulletin board that we put those up on and continue to track them. And eventually we get that hit on the 3rd or 4th time where we can make out the license plate and we can tie the truck to all 4 dumpings and charge them appropriately. So the cameras are very effective in places that are lower traffic, meaning it's not a lot of foot traffic or a lot of cars going by, because all the cameras are motion activated, and they can fill up if there's too much activity. But what we do in places of higher activity, we work with the community. If anybody puts out a camera, a Ring camera or some other type of device, in a spot that may pick up dumping and they catch something, we will investigate that, use that footage to prosecute the individual if possible, if we can identify the person, and file charges against them that will hold up in court. So we've worked with some businesses, a couple of apartment complexes that have installed cameras exactly for that purpose, and it's been very effective. The cameras are great. I don't want to repeat everything that Mr. Chalmers said, but really to get to the heart of it is exactly what he covered is we need to clean up, we need to do enforcement, but the education and changing behavior is key. I think that if we can do a lot of the stuff that we're working on in CleanStat, in getting communities empowered to clean up, stay cleaned up, make sure that everybody in the neighborhood is educated in what the options are, that they can go to the transfer station, that they can put out 3 bulk items, that they're supposed to use a trash can, where to put that trash can out, and not kind of fall into the bad habits of the bad neighbor next door. If we can do that, we'll dramatically cut the illegal dumping. Most of the stuff that we go out on is actually trash from within the neighborhood. I know there was a news story this morning, I think it was on Fox, about an alley that was packed full of stuff. We've been to that alley. We've cited the people that put the trash out there. Every single one of those people lived on that block. So, but the alley is full of trash and it needs to get cleaned up. But the people need to start disposing of it properly, using cans and putting it in the right location on the right day. And so that's some of the stuff we're working on in CleanStat and with Be More Clean to accomplish. Are there any questions for me?
Councilwoman Clark.
So I was going to ask you, thank you for, oh, yeah, that's
Right.
right. Stephanie's got this.
I'll wait until after.
This is a quick question. Those 3 arrests that you made and went to court and got probation and all,
Well, no arrest. We don't have arrest power, but
oh, what do you have, like, please come with me in front of a judge?
we subpoena them to come to court, and if they fail to show up, they can get a warrant for their arrest. But our investigators are unarmed. They don't have arrest
So you don't
power.
charge them with anything?
No, we criminally charge them, but we just don't handcuff them.
Oh, right, I wasn't thinking that. My question was, all right, there were 3. Thank you for talking about that because it gives me hope. But those 3 guys, do they all live in Baltimore City?
I don't have their addresses, but I would say 80% of our convictions are Baltimore City residents.
So it's basically, it's Baltimore people that are doing this illegal dumping.
Yep, a lot of it is actually daytime dumping. When I started looking into this job back in '09, I expected to see fly by night coming in under the cover of darkness to dump, and that's not really what happens. It's a lot of opportunistic dumping. It happens early morning, happens at the end of the day.
Real early.
For the contractors, it's a lot of, I'm coming back from a job and I couldn't make it to someplace to legally dump. I got to go to the job tomorrow morning. I got to load up with new supplies. I know a place near my house or near my girlfriend's house or near a place where I used to work that everybody dumps. So if I dump there, nobody will care. I won't get caught. There won't be any consequences. What they don't realize is we know where those places are too, and we now have cameras there. So we do catch them, and when we do
Well,
catch them and have the evidence, we prosecute them.
You've got a good team. They're out there working all the time. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying.
I think
There's
there's
got to be some kind of way to figure out some part of it too, and meet them halfway with a fence or something. But it's good to know that arrests or whatever you call them are made,
Convictions.
and people have to clean up other people's messes in return as
Yep.
part of their punishment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you got to go. So if you want to, I didn't have anything directly for you, being you talk all the time, obviously.
you all.
And you covered, I did have 4 questions, but you literally hit all of them. So,
I was listening.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm also happy to take any questions back that may pertain to code enforcement or illegal dumping. I don't want to belabor the point, but as Mr. Chalmers spoke about, the education aspect is so important. DHCD has developed 2 guides. One of them is our Dumping is a Crime resource guide to illegal dumping. The guide defines illegal dumping, lists the impacts on the community, explains the work of the Special Investigations Unit, and lists potential repercussions faced by those charged with illegal dumping. It also describes the Small Haulers Program and lists ways and locations for citizens to legally dispose of those items. If any of the council members would like these to hand out at community meetings, please let me know, and we'd be happy to provide them. DHCD also worked with DPW to produce a sanitation guide, and which we have here. This guide covers trash day procedures, proper container storage, recycling day tips, tenant responsibilities, and the bulk trash program. So we do try to reach out to the community, and the collaborative effort extends all the way into our citizens. So another way that we coordinate across communities is the Neighborhood Cabinet, which was created by the Mayor's Office to help coordinate community development activities across agencies. And while the Cabinet isn't specifically focused on 311 generated activities, they are focused on community development. And when members of the Cabinet or the Cabinet work groups come to these monthly meetings that have been going on for over a year, they certainly bring to the table some of their concerns, and certainly to have a good development or positive impact in the neighborhood, we need to make sure that maintenance and cleanliness concerns are addressed. These monthly meetings bring together Department of Housing, Planning, Transportation, Public Works, Rec and Parks, Health, Housing Authority, the Police Department, Baltimore Development Corporation, the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Public Schools, and many others. And just a quick example of one of the work groups that is in the Cabinet is a Green Network work group, which started a Lots of Love program with the Office of Sustainability to perform lot maintenance around 25 selected lots, which can include things like fencing and cleaning. And DHCD and the City of Baltimore also offer a number of other opportunities for community groups to get involved in cleaning and maintenance efforts. Mary Pat mentioned earlier CHUM and their efforts to conduct cleaning around the 2700 block of Tivoli, and they received community catalyst grants for operating costs, and we realized that a number of these small community groups, they struggle to keep their doors open, but also to conduct the work that is needed in their community. So those are just a few examples there, and like I said, I'm happy to bring any additional questions back or answer any questions that I can.
So the one request I'll make before I go to Councilwoman Clark is if you could send to the committee or probably just the whole council digital copies of what you have for us to post on social media.
Sure.
As well as the paper copies will be at least 1 or 2. You can save some trees though, and we can print on our own. Councilwoman Clark?
Oh, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Housing Department for that grant, and that came to CHUM, because it's led to exactly what we're talking about, which is thanks to solid waste and all the people who helped us in solid waste figure out how in the world to do all this. CHUM has now vehicles for not to substitute for regular city services, but to supplement them, especially for illegal dumping in that area of the CHUM neighborhood, in that development area right now. So it's been great. Thank you to Housing for the money. Then thank you to Mr. Chalmers for all the help and relationship building with equipment people and all, so that we're able to get ready to get underway and do that part and hire locally. Again, working through Mr. Chalmers to recruit our local people to do the work of sanitation, because we do believe that if people have jobs, however modest they may be, cleaning up their neighborhood, they're going to make everybody else keep it clean too and have a sense of hope for it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Environmental Control Board, Director Woods.
Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you for having me. My name is Rebecca Woods. I'm the director of the Environmental Control Board, and I'll be speaking about that agency as well as the Be More Beautiful program. As many of you know, the Environmental Control Board is an administrative agency that offers a hearing process to respondents that receive citations. Primarily, they're coming from housing, which is what Mr. Hessler was speaking to. The hearing process is available to anyone who receives an environmental citation, and those citations affect sanitation, environmental, health, safety, and other quality of life type issues found in Article 1, Section 40. Any type of citation is issued, the respondent has 30 days to request a hearing or to pay the original fine. If neither of those are completed, then there's a default process. Anyone who's in default is able to write into the agency to show good cause for why they should still have an opportunity for a hearing or pay the original fine. And we do really want to encourage people to participate in the process because we do believe in the process. Our hearing process is an independent hearing with a hearing officer that's acting independent of other city agencies. They hear testimony from the issuing agency as well as the respondent, and then make a determination about whether the respondent is responsible for the alleged violation. If the respondent is found responsible, the hearing officer then sets the appropriate fine based on any of the relevant factors presented, including ability to pay, severity of the offense, whether they're a repeat offender, and we do track repeat offenses to make sure that we're bringing that all into the hearing. The goal of the ECB overall is to change behavior, and the hearing process is one of those ways. It's an educational process. It's orderly but informal, where the rules of evidence do not apply. We encourage folks to bring in any information that they have, and that includes any hearsay evidence as well. The goal is to ensure that the respondent has an understanding of why they were cited, the requirements of the code, and then how to remain in compliance. And one of the examples I always give, I've probably said it in here before, is that a lot of respondents will come in after being cited for having excessive animal waste in their backyard, and they come in very upset. It's a $200 citation. They think, why is the city after me for my dog poop? I'm working 2 jobs, I'm trying to do the best I can, and the city's after me for dog poop. Well, through the educational process, we want to articulate to the respondent that animal waste is a food source for rats, so you're attracting rats, but that also, I've learned this from DBW, that animal waste, it acts like a vitamin K for rats, and so they then become immune to the efforts of DPW to abate the rats. So if there's too much animal waste, we have super rats running around that we can't kill, and we don't want that. So every time we then explain that to a respondent, they leave thinking, oh my God, I'm going home to clean up the dog poop that's in my backyard, because they understand the reason that the city is issuing those citations. So my point is, there's a lot of ordinance on the books, and I mean, I'm an attorney and I don't know everything that's on the books, so a lot of folks come in and don't know why the city's after them, and once they understand the reason for the citation and what they should do about it, the process seems to work. That's the hearing side of it. Then we have Be More Beautiful, which several people have mentioned in their testimony. That's also the ECB's way to try to modify behavior, to change behavior, and that's the city-led peer-to-peer beautification effort. In addition to changing behaviors and attitudes towards the beautification of the city, Be More Beautiful works to encourage residents, businesses, and other organizations to become directly involved in activities that will keep their neighborhood clean. We work with participating neighborhoods to identify block captains that are interested in taking the leadership role in the beautification of their own community. The block captains commit to recruiting their neighbors to sign the pledge and participate in the program, organizing ongoing beautification and cleaning activities, leading others to change their behaviors, and educating their neighbors on how to comply with specific city code requirements. When someone then takes the pledge, and I brought a pledge card as an example, they're literally signing a pledge, because the social science behind it is when you sign your name to something, you're more likely to actually follow through. And so it's perforated, we keep the signed portion, we hand over, this is what you agree to, you're committing to this. So When someone signs our pledge, they're agreeing to picking up trash and litter in front and back of their homes, calling issues into 311, educating their neighbors on the importance of keeping Baltimore clean, participating in activities that improve the appearance of their neighborhood, and encouraging other residents to do what they can do to make Be More Beautiful. In exchange for taking that pledge, each participant receives a cleaning kit, which includes a reusable bag, a trash grabber, puncture-proof gloves, and a vest. The concept of Be More Beautiful spreads through leadership and determination of the residents that are involved and not through city pushing it. And to us, that's very important. It's myself and Natasha Neal, who's my liaison, who was present last week for the hearing. It's very important to Natasha and I that we're not going into communities saying, sign this pledge, take this, you need to do this. It needs to be driven by the community. And that's something that has really worked well, and it's starting to spread because residents really believe in it. We're currently in a little over 50 neighborhoods with just under 2,000 pledges signed, which, I mean, we're growing fast, so that number might sound small, but it's actually really not. And the majority of the folks who have signed the pledge, it's real. I mean, they're really actually doing the work. So to us, that number means a whole lot, and we're really proud of it. Again, the expansion's happened through word of mouth and has grown from resident to resident and now neighborhood to neighborhood. So we have a lot of neighborhoods that say to us, I want in on that because I see what's going on across the street in my next door neighborhood, and I want what they've got. So we get constant requests, and we're doing what we can to try to expand. Each pledge that is signed, it's signed through the work of the block captains, like I said, and it's encouraging residents to get their neighbor involved and tell their neighbor, hey, you should put your trash out like this. This is our trash day. This is what you need to do for bulk trash. And our goal eventually is to have a presence in every neighborhood. There are 5 essential elements to our approach that has been successful thus far. The first is community organizing. We work with the participating communities to identify their goals for the calendar year, and we work to really make sure that they're manageable goals. We work with the community then to build capacity around what they want to achieve, what goals they actually want. We identify what the city can contribute, what the community can accomplish, and then what nonprofit partners we should be connecting that community with. The second element to our approach is training community leaders. We work with community leaders to approach issues from a different angle. Sometimes we use SWOT analysis, think bowl, and fishbone techniques to tackle issues in a different way when we're working with the communities. And we provide education on what's going on and how to articulate that information to neighbors. And Natasha's very good about blasting out information to everybody that we know of that needs this information about what the city's doing, what our nonprofit partners are doing, what grants are available. Anything that we have, we try to push out as quickly as possible. We also provide guidance on layering opportunities, and I'll go into that in just a moment, where we have some opportunities that we know of, our nonprofits do as well, and we encourage groups to use the different opportunities to try to layer that work and make something bigger than just a one-off small opportunity. The third element to our approach is community improvement projects, and that's our 3 different grant opportunities. Our first grant opportunity is the Love Your Block grant, which ranges from $500 to $1,500 for small beautification projects. A couple examples are the skate park mural that's in Hamden. There's a mural on the Bel Air Edison vacant lot container, and that was actually painted by youth participants. There's fencing at the Kirby Lane Pocket Park and tree pit revitalization in Boat Check. Those are just some examples of the smaller Love Your Block grants. The second grant opportunity is Care a Lot, which provides grant funding to community organizations to maintain vacant lots within their community footprint. Groups can apply to maintain up to 25 vacant lots during the grow season and invoice the city for payment for up to 10 visits per lot for the grow season. This program was transferred to Be More Beautiful from the Department of Planning at the end of the 2017 grow season, and during that grow season, there were about 150 lots maintained. In 2018, we grew that program to cover 423 lots, and during this past grow season in 2019, we had 587 lots that were maintained through the program. The majority of those lots are mayor and city council, so they're coming directly off of what DPW is then responsible for. The next step in 2020 in the growth season is to have a graduated program for groups that have demonstrated the capacity to add additional lots beyond that 25, and also provide workshop series to assist groups in transformation of the lots maintained through the program so that there's some active use of the program or of the lots, not just the maintenance. Our third grant opportunity is the Say Yes program, which is the Youth Environmental Stewards. In this program, each participating community that is awarded this grant is able to identify up to 5 youth participants for a 10-week session, and the youth participants can earn up to $500 during that 10-week session to plan and participate in the cleaning and beautification of their own neighborhood. Youth participants are supervised by community leaders rather than the city, which helps to foster that mentor-mentee relationship within the actual community. We have 3 sessions, one in the spring, the summer, and the fall. And the summer was added actually in 2019 to address concerns from the community that there were some youth that were not able to participate in YouthWorks for whatever reason, and they really needed something to do. So we figured out a way to create a session in the summer as well, which was very well received. The youth participants also complete a cleanliness index, which tracks the participants' perception of their own community. We found that that's very valuable, not only with adults, but with youth participants, because it forces them to really look at their own community and think, how do I feel about where I live? And that started to kind of change behavior with the youth participants, where they're more likely to say to their friend, you're not going to throw that in my community, because they're looking at their community through this different lens of, how do I feel about it? How does it look to me? I'm cleaning up here every weekend. No one else is going to trash my community. So we're starting to get some of those stories back from some of our block captains. This grant opportunity was created to directly address the concerns that we hear from a lot of residents, that the younger generation needs to feel connected to their community and needs to take pride in the appearance of their community. Many of the participants have formed lasting bonds with the community leaders. In one community, we have the youth participants from the fall of 2018. They're still going to the community leader's house for breakfast before school in the morning. So it's continued a whole extra year. In another community, we heard about a particular youth who was able to avoid gang recruitment by participating in this program. So there's real stories there. It's a small number at this point, but there are real stories where this is actually benefiting a lot of the youth that are engaged. I spoke about the layering efforts earlier. We work with the communities to use opportunities to build something bigger. So we have these 3 grant opportunities, and we like to work with groups to think of how can you use each grant opportunity to build upon each other, and then also leverage outside funding to build something even bigger. So an example of that is the Kirby Lane Pocket Park in Franklin Square community. Now with Parks and People and Bon Secours, there's a beautiful space that's been created there. But that's been layered with a horseshoe pit that was paid through Care-a-Lot funds, fencing that was paid through the Love Your Block grant, and then that community group is still continuing to receive Care-a-Lot for maintenance of that pocket park. So there's presence there from the community because of the activity with us. The 4th element is troubleshooting. We encourage residents to try to resolve any of the issues on their own before escalating to the city, but then when they do need to escalate, we step in and try to corral everybody that needs to deal with a particular issue. An example of that is in Oliver. There tends to be a good bit of construction dumping, and one of the problems, it's a loophole in 311, is if you call that particular issue in as dumping, housing does their investigation. A lot of times it's hard to track down who did that dumping. It gets kicked to DPW. DPW doesn't always have the equipment to pick up that dumping. If it gets kicked to DOT, DOT doesn't always answer to dumping. So sometimes the system, without it being the fault of the agencies, the system ping-pongs that request. So it's happened a couple times where Oliver's tried through 311, it's not getting anywhere. We're able to escalate that to CityStat, who pulled together the different agencies and say, okay, what's the plan? How are we going to get this done? And within 48 hours, it's completed. So we're able to kind of identify some of those issues, some of those loopholes with 311 to fix the way things get processed within city government. And the 5th element is communication and education. Something that we run into a lot with neighborhoods is you don't know what you don't know. And we work with the captains to provide that education so that the captains can then disseminate that into their own neighborhood. Some of our major reasons for success come to communication and education, and that's being responsive, being upfront with expectations, saying this is what we can do, this is what is not going to happen, and what can the community do to assist, because it's definitely not all on the city, and you heard that from the other city agencies that we can't do this alone. If we don't have a partnership with the community, we're not going to get anywhere. We also hold quarterly community leader summits where we share ideas and gather feedback from all the residents that are involved. So while it's been small so far, the work of Be More Beautiful has been very powerful and noticeable in many of our participating communities. Our goal, again, is to have a presence in every community throughout the city. We're currently a team of 2, so in addition to running the hearing process of ECB, it's myself and Natasha that do everything with Be More Beautiful. We are expecting to add a 3rd person to that team, and at that point we'll be able to expand citywide, and anyone who does want to participate will be able to encourage them to participate. There are so many residents that are dedicated to the beautification of our city, and with a little bit of support and a little bit of resources, we can go a long way. That's all I had to present.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just what a great job you're doing. And you keep saying things are just small or just a few or something. And there's a saying out of, I don't know who, the Old Testament, or one of its writers, who saves one life saves the earth entire. I would just believe that. So you're doing it. That's
Thank
how
you.
you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's working.
It is, and we're getting there.
It's all about that. One life at a time.
I agree.
Thanks. Thanks.
Covered every question I had. Thank you. Our, next up, we have DOT Director Sharkey.
Good evening, Steve Sharkey, Director, Department of Transportation. Department of Transportation stands with DPW and the other associated CleanStat agencies to assist as needed in many facets. First of course, we attend CleanStat regularly. We also work together hand in hand with DPW on a couple particular items. One would be setting up the signs for street cleaning and then enforcing said signs with the TO program for the street sweeping. We also work with DPW on some of the larger roads where they clean, and then sometimes we'll be in charge of setting up the maintenance of traffic to keep the workers safe. So, and we also work on individual projects other times, so we like working with them. We also work on our medians and our mowing and cleaning our medians. So, of course, cleaning the city is important, and we continue to stand with the associated agencies.
Thank you so much for all the things you do. You're doing a great job at DOT. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the only, I think it's more of a statement than a question. What are some of the challenges or opportunities you see? Because one of the things that I know for sure that come up when whether we're talking about, I'll speak to my district, but I'm sure this is indicative of other parts of the district where we may have, Hilton Parkway, for example, Edmondson Avenue, or Uplands Parkway, areas that like it may be particularly dangerous for DPW crews or Rec and Park crews to do cleaning. Can you speak to where there are opportunities to improve that coordination? And maybe it's through this Gateways partnership, I'm not sure, for shutting off traffic, in and out. I mean, that was actually sort of the impetus for me pulling this hearing together in the first place. Was there are particular pockets or corridors in my district, but a part of the city that I know require extra attention, and oftentimes it's taken that coordinate. I've had to coordinate in my office to say, hey, look, can all three of these parties get together to hit these areas? Can you talk about how your agency is working to hit these corridors that do require your agency in particular to work in collaboration with DPW or Rec and Parks to coordinate these corridor cleanings?
Yeah, certainly. So a lot of times, I think this especially happens more with Recs and Parks as well, that there'll be a tree or some other thing that's right on the side of the road. If they don't have the appropriate equipment or crews for maintenance of traffic, we'll help them, and we're happy to assist whenever asked. But usually, that work might have to be done on a weekend or some other time when traffic slows down, because of the high traffic volumes during the week.
So I guess what I'm asking is, are there ways to have regular, ongoing sort of a partnership where this okay, go ahead. You know what I'm getting at, Mr. Chalmers.
Absolutely. So Rec and Parks, DOT, and DPW, we meet monthly.
Okay.
And that meeting rotates around either in Steve's shop, or we're up at the Rec and Park headquarters in Drew Hill, or down in my office, and we strategically look at a different set of gateways than what Dan was speaking of. So that conversation that started based on your request to manage Hilton Parkway. So we talk about 83, I-83, Hilton Parkway, Franklin Town median, the highway to
Franklin Town Road
nowhere.
through the park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do meet.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. Yeah, because I mean that was one of the things. I forgot to mention Franklin Town, Purnell Drive, Cooks Lane, Hillsdale, Forest Park, where there's a lot of dumping going on, but there's a lot of traffic as well, and I think that provides a particular challenge for the safety of the crews. And I've joined some of these cleanups on those arteries and can absolutely attest to it's pretty scary to be on the side of the road there. So I am glad to hear that there is now an ongoing meeting and that my
We also
monthly
wanted-
complaints.
we have some new OSHA certified uniforms coming in, and we have one.
Oh, I will take it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What color?
Green.
Oh, nice, like environmental.
Okay. All right. With no more questions, thank you, Mr. Sharkey. And last up, we have Health Department, Mr. Amaros.
Good evening, members of the council. Jeff Amherst on behalf of the Health Department. I will try and keep my presentation to under an hour.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'll be very brief.
Going on.
So I just wanted to share some quick updates about the polystyrene ban and plastic bag reduction bill. So the polystyrene ban, as you all know, working upstream at what waste goes into our streets. The ban went into effect on October 19th of last year. Since that ban went into effect, we've issued 38 citations so far at $200 a pop. That's $7,600 in fines collected. So we're continuing to cite for that on a daily basis with our food licensees. I know that this past Friday we actually had 3 different establishments cited just during the work of the Social Club Task Force. So that's moving forward well. For the comprehensive bag reduction bill, which was just signed into law a week ago, we've begun meeting with sustainability, the mayor's office, and Charm TV to, as we did with the plastic bag polystyrene bill, begin moving forward with a public education campaign. So expect to see that start rolling out over the next few months as we educate establishments and residents as to the new law, what it means for them, and what will be expected. Any questions?
So I did. So one of the, thank you for those updates. One of the areas that does concern me, especially when we talk about, illegal dumping that may have pooling water or other areas for insect and airborne illnesses. Can you speak to the health department's work at sort of addressing this issue, whether it be West Nile virus, Lyme disease, other sort of airborne or insect-borne illnesses that we do know that there's a connection between sort of piles of trash that get rained on and sort of the other unintended consequences of that, which could be these illnesses. Can you speak to how is the health department monitoring these areas in particular, or is there any thought or collaboration around that piece to sort of the health connection? And I'd say there's a similar connection with the rat rub out program, rat waste.
We've had enough rat talk tonight.
Yeah, a lot of rat talk. We've talked about the super rats already, but just anything to add around sort of this multi-agency piece that the health department plays in keeping residents safe and healthy.
Sure. So we actually, it really depends when you say pool of water. That can vary from really small, like after a rain, you've got empty garbage can lid. I've got them in my backyard occasionally where water collects, up through larger standing bodies of water that create almost a collection point when there's heavy rain. On the smaller scale side of things, we work with residents just to educate, to dump out standing water when you see it, especially during warmer months when we know there's mosquito population that can build up and transmit disease. For larger pooling water, I can tell you we, in the past have been in contact with DBW. I think the last one was a few years ago. When we have like large potholes and things like that with DOT and DPW to help address if needed. We also stay in touch with the state if there are large bodies of water that need to be treated, standing bodies of water for mosquito and insect larvae.
Well,
Councilwoman Clark?
I was just thinking about mosquitoes. and wishing we were in the season where it was something to worry about.
Yeah.
What about that? Are we gonna, what's the policy in the city right now about somebody calls up and says, we've got mosquitoes and you've got to do something about it? Is the city, or what do we do? I know it's the winter, but the pools of water suggested it. So what resources will we bring to that battle when the warm weather comes?
Yeah, we often contact the state in those situations for treatment when we've got a particularly large pool of standing water that we think needs to be treated. But I can check back in with our Assistant Commissioner for Environmental Health just to get exact information on who we contact and what the process is from that point.
Right. In other words, basically, that's exactly the issue. It's the state. We don't do it. So if we have to rely on the state, we need a sort of expedited way for our public to get to that level and get service. So that's really what I'm thinking about and why I'm saying it in January.
Yeah.
And because you were kind enough to sit here and listen and now get your turn, and you said pools of water, and it just came to my mind. Thank you. Thanks
Absolutely.
a lot.
And just broadly, can you, before we close out, speak to just the general health effects of trash and environmental dumping on residents?
No, but I can provide you with follow-up data. I don't want to speak without the data in front of me on that, and that's actually a sort of a much larger question about the impact on social determinants of health, and looking at, I will be in this room less than a week from now talking about chronic disease and the impacts there. So I think that's actually a much broader question. I'm happy to provide in written feedback.
Okay. Yeah, and so just to note to the committee member that's still here, I do plan to reconvene this hearing on a maybe quarterly basis, seasonal basis. I think we can work with the CleanStat folks to see what's appropriate to track outcomes, data outcomes, whether, because I mean, we have areas that are being measured for areas. I do want to track that progress in the same way that we are having the quarterly multi-agency violence reduction hearings, the monthly oversight with the police department. I think this is a very important area that, and no matter where you are in the city, people are passionate about, people care about, and it's something that we should stay on top of. And not saying that you guys aren't doing that independently, but the council does need to be informed as to where this progress is. So I would say we're looking for April or so for another date to revisit this, given, we know that it'll be the beginning of the change of the season anyway, so be good to know where we are.
Grass you love will be
I love high grass and weeds calls, it's one of my favorites. Tis the season, or almost the season. With that, I want to thank all of you for sticking it out. We do have one member of the public who signed up to testify, Mr. Barksdale. You want to come up and introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name's Taurus Barksdale. I just wanted to, I'm here, I stuck around so long because this issue is like an issue that I've become passionate about, just cleaning the community. So I think it's been a lot of great ideas, a lot of, good things have been said, but I think the biggest thing is missing is just the community engagement aspect of it. So I believe, more things should be done to involve the community. So I have a nonprofit, the Baltimore Beautification Project, and we've been doing a lot of, large-scale cleanups around the city. And Mr. Chalmers, he's been very helpful, working with us with that project. We've had meetings with Be More Beautiful. We also had meetings with the African American Male Engagement. So with our nonprofit, we hire individuals that disadvantaged individuals, squeegee boys. Anybody that doesn't have a job, we hire them. And so far, we've been coming directly out our pockets. So we've, really haven't gotten any support, from the government agencies. Last year, we probably spent about $8,000, just me and one of my partners. So we spent about $4,000 each. So I'm here today just asking if we could get, some type of help, some type of funding. We could, help DPW with the, cut down on the, the backlog of items, jobs that they have. So that's just basically, you know, I had some other ideas I forgot, but, you know, for the most part, we do have we do have, you know, grassroots organizations out here that, you know, willing to help. And also, what are we doing, you know, like, I'm also a candidate for city council, and I think things we should bring to the table are, you know, different avenues to motivate the community to clean up, you know. I wasn't around during this time, but my family, they told me about the Afro Clean Block, you know, like different initiatives like that. Why aren't we doing things like that? Why aren't we, you know, rewarding communities for clean up? Every time I do a cleanup, I always make sure I have children with me, you know, from the youngest we had probably was from 7 years old to, you know, teenagers. And if you give them a few dollars, they more than happy to clean up, and they love to clean up. Every week now, I have children asking me, are we going to do a cleanup this weekend? Are we going to do a cleanup this weekend? And from that, they tell their friends. So now I have a whole group of, you know, just kids ready to clean up. So I think, you know, we should add more initiatives to motivate the community to clean. That's all I have.
Amen.
Thank you.
And I would, if you do have a second, I would recommend talking to Director Woods about some of the opportunities they have, because they're.
Yeah, he's spoken
Okay.
with Natasha before, but I'm
Oh,
happy
perfect.
to also speak again.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. No one else has signed up. Did you have anything, ma'am? Okay, good. Oh, you can come up.
Well, if you want
Come
to
on
talk,
up.
come and
Yeah.
use the microphone.
And then if you could state your name.
My name is Natise Richardson, and I'm just here because I agree with what he's saying, and the communities need to be more involved. I grew up on 33rd Street. I was born and raised 1500 block of 33rd, same block as Memorial Stadium. And I think it was second Saturday of the month, especially during the Saturday and during the summertime, we had an alley cleanup where we would keep the alleys. Each block would keep the alleys clean. But back then, I think the city would donate you like those big, tall, brown paper bags and a push broom. I think it may be just for the push brooms and stuff were just for rent, just for the day. I mean, they would just let us borrow them, but it was just still a good idea, even if you just let them borrow them for that day. It's plenty of people that would like to come out, but they just don't know where to start. They need that. You know, it was a lady, Miss Debbie. If it wasn't for Miss Debbie, even my mom and other moms and dads that help wouldn't know where to start. So it's not a thing about being ignorant or not being able or not wanting to. It's just that people need to know where to go and what to do and who to contact. So if anybody needs any help with anything, I'm a community outreach person. I love the outreach towards the community, in the community any way I can help. So,
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. This hearing is in recess, and we will reconvene at a later date. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.